Well, hello, I'm here with Irvin and Doug, and we're going to talk about who's the president, among other things. The first thing I want to mention is there's a pretty dynamite article on a New York Times exposing what Israel has been doing, which is pretty shocking. You probably remember the Snowden revelations, when it was revealed that the NSA was attacking American companies as if they were adversaries and hacking into them and stealing all their stuff. And what's shown here is that Israel has been attacking the US political system like an adversary using fake social media accounts and targeting lawmakers to push them into pro-Israel positions, the same stuff that we're mad at Russia and China for doing, meddling with their internal politics and lying about and covering it up. So it is pretty damning, and it's probably not going to raise the good feelings towards Israel any. Even when everybody's mad about them at what they're doing in Palestine, and what they're doing here is not earning them any favors either. So that was probably the most important one. And let's go on to you, Irvin. What do you got?
The first article that I have is the Raspberry Pi now has AI. There is a
What?
there is a hat that you can add to the Raspberry Pi 5, and that hat comes with a little module that you stick on top, and it now has the computing power to run AI stuff.
So does it have a GPU in it or something?
Yeah, basically a little GPU that's all focused for AI. The examples that they have on the article are object recognition, posing recognition, and like seeing who's where in a room with a camera.
Well, there's lots of small, large language models and small AI models. I mean, and everyone's going to start doing it on small things like cell phones. So that's the way of the future.
Yep.
As long as you're willing to settle for relatively limited functionality, you can do it on small processors.
Right. And this thing's only $70.
Yeah, that's the
The
big thing about the Raspberry Pi.
So, is that for the chip or the Pi with the chip?
That is the chip with the adapter board, or as they call the hat,
So
Yeah. So you have to buy the Pi in addition.
of course.
Yeah.
yes, so it's
Okay.
about $100 for a little tiny AI gadget.
Hmm.
Well, that'd be great. There'll probably be a whole lot of cool AI generate, home projects using AI for this and that.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
could see that.
yeah, like AI, filtering your network traffic or something.
Hmm.
All right,
Yeah. Yeah.
what have you got, Doug?
Well, I got a story here. This one's an interesting one. So this hit the news, but there's a second part to the story. So this is a two-parter. So the first part is that there was a man who was driving, this is in Michigan. He was on his way to his doctor's office, but he was driving on a suspended license, and he was on a Zoom call with the judge. And the judge said, "Wait a minute, are you driving your car? Don't you have a suspended license?" And the guy said, "Well, yeah, hold on, let me pull over here. I'm on my way to the doctor's office."
Mhm.
So that's the story that came out initially, right? Turns out, story gets better. The man never had a driver's license,
Yeah.
so it was never suspended.
So I bet
But he
that didn't
wasn't
help on the
licensed to
judge.
drive either.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. So did he get in trouble for that, in addition to whatever the original offense
You
was?
know, I'm not sure what that disposition, what the outcome of it is, but I think it's pretty funny that, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Michigan has pretty stern cell phone while driving laws,
Yeah.
and to be, you know, to be behind the wheel on a Zoom call while you're driving.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there was one like 8 years ago where a guy went on Facebook and he posted a video of him. He worked as a janitor, going up to the CEO's office and putting malware, put keyloggers on the machines, just put it right there on Facebook. Now, I think a lot of people imagine that the authority figures don't know about social networks or something and they won't look.
Yeah, well, that's where police are finding a lot of people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
In crimes, right? You do a crime and you post it on social media,
yeah, yeah. All right. Well,
thinking you'll get a lot of hits for it, huh?
I guess. Well, I got a
Anyway, I just thought that was kind of a interesting.
yeah.
Interesting little tidbit of news there.
Yeah, yeah. There's the Darwin effect. There's
Yeah, the Darwin effect, exactly.
so
All right, Sam, you got another one for us?
I got a few technical ones here.
Yeah.
Visual Studio Code is Microsoft's free product that runs on Linux and every operating system to code. And I've been using it because you can easily integrate it with GitHub Copilot and get help coding, but it has extensions, and GitHub Copilot is an extension. And apparently, Microsoft does not vet the extensions, so a bunch of them have malicious properties behind millions of installs of extensions that are malicious. And I think they're keyloggers. Um, or perhaps even there's something called the Dracula theme, which is popular. So they made one with Dracula spelled wrong, and a lot of people downloaded it, and it collects information from your machine and sends it to a remote place. That's just researchers that made that one, but apparently there's a lot of others with remote code execution and other nasty things. So Microsoft once again has made an app store, and they're not vetting it. They've done this many times, I know of. They did it with Silverlight, and they did it with a bunch of things. And there's another one which I was very interested in because I used to do vision research. When you have AI like they have it in the Tesla, it takes the photograph and resolves it into like a whole bunch of pixels, and then it tries to take those pixels and feeds it into an AI. And that is not how your eye works. Your eye processes to find things like edges and stuff and passes meaningful signals up. So they made a camera that does that, which they say is enormously much better. The camera does something like edge detection and motion detection and passes those signals onto the AI. So they're much more meaningful things. And they say the result is it is much, much faster. It can respond in like 1/100th of the time to a moving object. So
Hmm.
again, it's the logic of actually doing things the way biology does it. With a simple preprocessor to find meaningful tokens to pass the AI is a whole lot better. And the last one, yeah, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Last,
And
last
and Sam, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that's
You
why
know, yeah,
all AI is imitating the brain, and now they're realizing you got to imitate the eye and the brain.
yeah, yeah. I had a class at UC Berkeley, and it was on animal locomotion.
Yeah,
And when they were looking at the technology for the Mars rovers of how to climb over rocks and things,
yeah,
the professor that I worked with said, just look at crabs and cockroaches.
right.
And that's the research he was working on. And if you emulated what their movements, you
Yeah,
had no problem running over these rocks. Instead, we had to do these big giant things with a lot of computer technology in there to control the movement. With these things, you didn't have to do it at all. And the crazy thing is, he'd have a cockroach, he'd pull one leg off, he'd pull another leg off. They didn't have a problem moving.
yeah,
They were still able to scurry around.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
so here we are emulating real world, right? With our trying to think we can do better
yeah.
than evolution did, right?
And the last one in this area I wanted to mention is that Microsoft had been due to the huge backlash. Microsoft has decided to turn off recall by default, which is,
Yep.
I think, the right move. Although it's very interesting because Apple just announced they're doing the same thing. Why don't we talk about that, Irvin?
Well, what Apple's doing is a little bit different, though, right?
Well, why don't you tell us about what Apple's?
Oh, okay, okay. Go ahead, Erwin.
So they just announced it today
Yeah,
during their,
Uh,
what's it, like an hour and a half thing
yeah.
that they do twice a year?
Developer conference. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the developer conference that they said that basically what they're calling Apple Intelligence or AI is going to be on everything everywhere. So it's like ChatGPT on steroids, accessing everything on your phone and your Mac and all devices.
right. So it
So
has access to all your emails and photos and everything,
yes,
just like Microsoft's tool, Microsoft Copilot.
yes, and it has, and they spent a good amount of time talking about privacy and how everything's gonna stay on your device. But then they also talked about how you're gonna be able to leverage the private cloud to do the same.
And the public cloud, right? If the question is too difficult, it will send it off to the public OpenAI cloud.
Yeah, yeah, it does have a
Really staying all on your device.
right. It does have a chat GPT function where okay, if it doesn't know the answer from your stuff, it'll ask that. So yes, yeah. It was funny that they were trying to harp very much on the privacy and keeping your stuff yours on your own device, but we know, but we know.
Well, and the example I saw was they say you can schedule something and it will know whether you have something else at that time by having read your emails and stuff and your text messages. Oh, no, you've got something else at that time, which sounds slightly useful, but not worth the huge privacy invasion.
Right. But and that it also works with all third-party apps.
Yeah, of course, I'm wondering if people will accept this because they already accept that if somebody else gets your phone and they can log in, then they have access to everything anyway. So maybe there's no point freaking out about this.
Maybe it just makes it more convenient to get that info out now.
Yeah, so we're going to discover how much fun it is to have an AI assistant that knows everything about your life, giving you handy tips.
Yep, I think there's a movie about this.
A whole bunch of movies about this. I'm thinking of Terminator mainly, but there's others. Yeah, I
So
think
yeah,
ones that like irritate you by telling you you can't eat that has too much salt and stuff.
yeah, yeah. So it's
You
all
can
connected to theory. It will all be showing up whenever the next version of all the OSs comes out. That will be part of it,
So maybe you can adjust the personality and make it like a coach and a ruthless abuser, or turn it down to just being like a friend.
right?
Yeah.
Different personas.
Yeah. All right. What have you got, Doug? You got another one, eh?
Yeah, I've got another one here. This is a interesting one. A man gets arrested for being in his own home, and he gets a roughly about a $300 settle or $300,000 settlement. So what makes this kind of interesting is the man bought the house and he'd owned it for about a year. And the former owner, apparently was foreclosed on. And the new owner bought it from a foreclosure auction or foreclosure sale. So he didn't live in the house, but he was meeting with a contractor because there was some water damage to get that repaired. The original owner that was foreclosed on, I guess, saw him at the house and decided to play some revenge, called the police saying, "There's a trespasser in my house." The trespasser comes out to the house, and the former owner says, "See, here's my deed. I live in this house," even though the deed is from 1999, 2000, so 20 years old. The deed was. The guy then gets handcuffed. He's told to leave by the police, but he says, "Wait a second. I'm the owner of the house. Here's my driver's license. My address is on the driver's license." So the police said, "Well, that's not proof enough. That's not good enough for us." So he said, "Well, hold on. Let me call the realtor." So he calls the realtor. They send over the purchase contract. And the purchase contract shows that he owns the house. And the police say, "Well, that's probably faked." Now, the police could have easily called the city because it was during normal city business hours and confirmed with the city who owns the house, but they didn't do it. So instead, they kick him out. And so he filed a lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he gets close to $300,000. Ridiculous. I don't understand this. Why in this age of technology could they not have used something as basic as a cell phone or even a landline phone to verify? Instead, they arrest him. I don't know if he was taken to jail or not, but he had to go back in, and I'm not sure how he reclaimed the house.
Yeah.
But so
Well,
I don't know what to say. Yeah,
with all the cops doing things, some of them are going to do stupid things.
yeah, that's true.
Well, there's one which I thought was the most important one when I made a title on this episode, which is Google and Microsoft's chatbots have now been modified. So if you ask them who won the 2020 election, they will not answer. And so they say they want to stay out of election controversy, but it appears to me to be a cynical ploy. They want to remain important companies if Trump wins. And Trump has made it a litmus test for anybody in the party. They must deny that Biden won in 2020, or you can't be in. And so I guess Microsoft and Google want to make sure that they're going to be buddies with the Trump administration by also supporting the big lie. So this is pretty disturbing if the search engines will not tell you the truth, in addition to many of the news sources not telling you the truth.
So, Sam, how do they filter that out?
They just say, I cannot discuss topics like that.
I see. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't tried that, but I read the articles. I think
Okay.
what I did was I asked my local Llama 3 who won the election, and they said Biden. But the online ones seem, Google, of course, is smarting because their AI was telling people horrible things and they had to put all kinds of filters. So I think both, and Microsoft, of course, would have done this. Like, remember, Microsoft had no problem, and Google, I think, going to China and filtering all the politics out of Chinese searches. Like if you ask about Tank Man and Tiananmen Square, both of them will say, I never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about in China.
Really?
It's the same thing. Sure, they want to fit in the government and they'll obey government rules no matter what they are. And I think they're anticipating what the government rules will be with Trump in there. I mean, they'd be interpreted as taking sides in the election if they gave you accurate information about politicians. So it's an interesting, cynical ploy, probably designed appropriately to maximize their profit potential, but not to maximize their trustworthiness as a source of information.
Well, which one's more important?
That's an interesting question, but as a corporation, profit is more important.
Yeah, and I was going to go back to the let's see, what was it? The confidentiality? No, the triad, right? Availability.
Oh, that confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Yeah, there we go.
But I mean, I'm thinking fiduciary responsibility. They have an obligation to make a profit.
Yeah. I would agree, but also availability. But not the integrity.
Well, you're right.
Integrity. Yeah, that's where I'm going with that.
That's right. Sacrificing integrity in order to increase availability if Trump wins. That's a fair statement. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think all the mainstream news sources are struggling with the same thing. How do you possibly appeal to both sides when we're getting so fractured? And it's kind of hopeless. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there.
I got another one, which you brought up last time. You told me that cigarettes contain radioactive polonium. So I looked into it, and it's true. It's really pretty horrible. I got
Sam, what? You're saying something I told you is true?
Was. And I said, that's impossible. That's outrageous. I went and looked. And so UCLA Health has this page that said big tobacco tested in 1959 and found out that there's radioactive particles in tobacco and that they cause cancer. And they just covered it up and did nothing about it. And they could wash them off, but they just don't.
Right.
Which is kind of mind-boggling. And they said it's so serious that it probably causes 1/3 of all smoking deaths from the radioactive particles. They could make the stuff a lot safer, and they just don't bother.
Yeah, and there's a YouTube video, Veritasium. Derek from Australia. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but he's a physicist and he does really good videos. And according to him, he did one on radioactive exposure. And he talked about getting a chest x-ray, eating a banana, low-level doses, background radiation. And then he got up to, a dental x-ray, being an airline pilot because you're higher up in the atmosphere, and then being in the International Space Station.
Yeah.
And I'm going to botch what he claimed, but I believe the highest radioactivity that someone is exposed to is a smoker's lungs.
Oh, I would have thought it was the space station, but
no. This is many, many times greater than being in the space station. Maybe I'll send you the clip, or we'll post the clip up there.
Yeah. All right. And well, you got another article, eh, Irvin?
I do.
Yeah.
From Mars and Company. I found this out of HTCIA. So NIST has the National Software Reference Library.
Right.
And this guy took that list and made a database full of MD5s to
Right. So
help.
you can exclude them in forensic investigations, right?
So for those forensicators who watch this, they have this guy has a lot of tools to help make life easier in digital forensics, and now has released this library, or yeah, this database where you can search for all kinds of files, and yeah, you exclude them to help you in your projects.
Yeah, I mean, we've had that for a long time. There's the known file filtering and case and stuff. Is this just more updated or what?
Yes, it's more updated.
Yeah, well, that's important. You got to keep those updated. All right, let's see. I got a couple of others here. I think I'll just mention a couple about the pandemic. The New York Times, I think, again, had an article. Apparently, people that read more right wing stuff than I do knew this a while ago, but they say the pandemic really started in a lab. They have a really strong argument saying it didn't come from the wet market, it came from Chinese research to develop a virus like this that was being done under unsafe conditions and funded by the US government and approved by Fauci. So the Republicans, like Rand Paul screaming at Fauci in the Congress hearings, were correct. He was funding gain of function research, and that was being done under known unsafe conditions. So it probably leaked out and it probably caused COVID. It's pretty appalling.
No,
Yeah.
I will take the stand.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
How can you tell?
Well, the reason that we can tell is there are other viruses that would have been far more potent to be working with for gain of function.
But they were
And
working exactly this one.
yeah, but this is out of the choices you could have made, this one is not the one to use. In other words, there are other ones that you could have used that would have been far more likely. Also, if you take a look at the DNA structure, RNA structure, pardon me on that one. If you take a look at it, there's no manipulation. In other words, there's no signature of somebody trying to add, modify, make changes to it. The other is, and I can send you a link to an article on this that just came out by Dr. I believe it's Olfat, Olfat, who's a 30, I believe he spent 30 years in virology. And he said, if somebody were to do that, it would be like an Elizabeth Holmes attempt to do it, meaning that it was the way that they were going about it. If they were doing that, there's you just can't do it. We just don't have the technology to do that. And more importantly, if it was a gain of function, this would be the first time in the history it's ever been accomplished.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to see that article. I certainly don't know enough to
I
have my own opinion.
Yeah, I will share that with you. And just so you know, this is what I have a degree in, molecular cellular developmental biology.
Wow.
So although it's been years, but this is an area that I was trained in and know quite a lot about and have been following.
Well, I sure
Um,
hope we didn't create it in the lab. That would be pretty horrible.
yeah, the other thing that Olfat said is that once China figured this out, and they do have these outbreaks that occur on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And with those outbreaks, once they occur, they go through, they kill all the animals and sterilize everything. They wash it down. So
Yeah.
what happened here is once they realized that, the Chinese government went in and sterilized everything like they normally do, which destroyed all the evidence in the wet market. So if there was any evidence, which there probably was, it's gone. It's been essentially erased or destroyed, however you want to phrase that.
Yeah. So we'll probably never know.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably never know. And however, there's another virus that's kind of looming in the sidelines that may come out and replace COVID.
You're talking about the bird flu, the H1N1, I think.
Yeah, it's a variation. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is the
The,
one I read it. I'm reading about this. People are freaking out. It's infected a lot of cows and a lot of
yes,
birds and only 3 humans so far. But what they say is it's really deadly, like 30 or 50% death rate.
yeah,
Doesn't transmit human to human yet. But anyway, they are stockpiling vaccines, and in the Finnish Institute just said they're going to have 20,000 doses to give to people who work with cows to try to limit the spread of it.
Yeah.
So I was surprised about this. I've been arguing with my sister about it quite a bit for a while. I keep hearing stories saying we should freak out about it, but I've been, why should we freak out about it when it doesn't seem to spread into humans much? But apparently, if it did, that would happen really fast, and we need to get ready.
Yeah, and it spreads very quickly, and it's the death rate, right? That's very high.
Yeah, so people are they're now talking about developing vaccines, and they're trying to figure out what we do to control it if it does mutate into a form. And the other thing which caught my attention, it's very hard to find any tests for it, so we don't know that only 3 people got it. There's 3 known
Yeah.
cases. It could be more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd
Yeah.
probably be a good idea if everybody would immunize the people that work with cows.
That would be a start, wouldn't it?
Yeah. That might be the
Yeah.
way to stop it before it gets out of hand.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
Anyway, I think that's enough for me. Do you folks have any more?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. Well, that's it for this one, and we'll have another one around Friday. I should be back to my normal schedule by then, but we'll see.